Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
I am here with Lindsey Rainwater. You have heard from her before, and I'm excited to continue the story. You know, the first time that we did this with Lindsey, if you remember listening, one of the things she said is that there's not a way that Manifest 10K, the course, doesn't still play out in her life today and hasn't impacted. And so I wanted to talk to her because Lindsey not only did the online course, but she also came to the first ever Manifest 10K live. So I want to talk about what that experience, what that means in her life, and what's changed since then. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank you. Happy to be here again.
I'm so excited to talk to you as always. Just give us the elevator pitch. What do you do? What does Lindsey do? Who do you help?
I am a higher self integration expert. I help women in particular to find their best version. It really ties in with higher self, which is, more of the spiritual side of finding out who you want to be, who you are on a universal level, stepping into that power, and that can really bring in your best future self, and helping women to find that in a really real way, and not in a it's not theoretical. We really step into her and we find her confidence and her knowledge, and we start living as her, and we see how that can change our lives in terms of confidence and everything from business to relationships to parenting, and how she can just completely shift the paradigms of your life and make you into the person who you actually came here to be, until people's and society's opinions of you caused you to be who you feel like you are being forced to be. So that's what I do. I help women bring out that higher self and in all of her amazing ferocity.
Yeah. Awesome. Good. So you're an entrepreneur, as most people are what I've figured out is when you take Manifest 10K, you're either an entrepreneur or you are, but you just don't know it yet. So I think it brings that out in you. So that's really cool. So you are building a business. So my first question is, you'd already been through the Manifest 10K course. You guys had success. I'll remind everybody, Lindsey alongside, did the program, more or less read it to her husband. Correct me if I say anything wrong. More or less read it to her husband, Corey, and together they actually manifested $10,000 in the form of him getting paid more. And that continues to grow and grow. And so if you haven't heard the episode where we talk about the story of how, a car repair, which most people are like, how did I create this disaster, something that's costing us money? That's the point where I see most people, like, they get off track. If that happened, they get off track. But Lindsey kept doing the work, and that car repair turned into the path. That was part of the path that led to the $10,000. So catch up on that if you haven't so far. Having that success, I want to know why did you decide to come to Denver and do Manifest 10K Live?
That was actually another really funny story, because I loved Manifest 10K, the online course, because it was so do at your own pace, and there was no pressure on it. You could get all the support you wanted, but there was no pressure. And that was really cool because as much as I try to be like that uber confident person who just like flings myself into things, at the same time, I do kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be any good at this, and I don't want like everyone staring at me while I try it for the first time. So, Manifest 10K online was such a cool but kind of gentle entry option into the world of manifesting. But it worked so beautifully, and it changed so much. And, I have some really big goals that I want to meet, and, in my life and in my business. And one day, and it's so funny because I I just want to point this out, that sometimes things happen and you're like, did I just manifest that? And it feels really like egotistical to even like toss that idea out there because other people are involved. But I want people to know that your manifesting efforts can sometimes like be that little energetic spark that like seems to be the glue that brings everything together. And there's nothing wrong with like thinking that or owning that or going, hey, maybe I did create this. Because what happened was there was you and Angela and like 3 other people, and you were all off doing these amazing things and posting all these pictures to Facebook of you guys going out and you're hanging out and, group photos. And I had a moment of, I want that. I want to be going places. I want that life of going and masterminding and, meeting these women in person and having these pictures taken and all that. And, I'm listening to the little voices in my head, my higher self. And it was basically, okay, who would you most want to find yourself standing next to in one of these photos? And the first person that popped in my head was Angela. And they're like, okay, that's fair. Who would be the easiest person for you to picture yourself standing next to? And I went, Cassie Parks. Like totally, straight up. That feels the most easy because, you and I, we do vibes so well, and I love your energy, and you make everything seem so easy. And if there's not ease, don't do it.
Right.
And so okay, I'm setting that intention that I'm going to stand next to Cassie Parks and be having just a fantastic time. And I'm going to get these cool pictures, and I'm going to have that experience of becoming that person who gets to travel and go do these fun things with women who I totally love and respect. And the next day, you were suddenly like, I have an idea for this live thing. And it scared the heck out of me. I will not lie. Just the fact that I set that intention, and the next freaking day you came up with this, and I'm like, well, I can't really not go now, can I?
Right.
So that was really what catalyzed it. And then, I obviously brought it up to Corey, this is what happened, and Cassie just opened this, and he's like, well, how much is it? And I told him, he's just like, just do it, just book it, no hesitation. He's like, just, basically, put that, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, put that bookmark in the universe that, that commitment that you're going, and we will figure it out from there. And I will also say,
let's talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about, but I want to come back to this commitment part. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, through the listening thing again, I managed to book, because people kept saying book your flight as early as possible. And I put it off for a couple weeks, and I knew I needed to do it. It was right in my head. And then all of a sudden I got that feeling of, go book your tickets right now.
Yeah.
And I got this screaming amazing deal on my airplane tickets, and they left from the small town I live in. And it was amazing the way it all just came together. And it was even if it had been a little more, difficult, it hadn't fallen together quite that way, I still would have gone. But just the way the universe was like, thank you for letting me know you wanted this experience. Here's everything you need to make it possible.
Right?
And yeah, it was just, that in itself was an amazing experience. And that was just the beginning of even getting to go to Denver and meet up with everybody. So
getting Lindsey and Corey have a Manifest 10,000 award, because when you reach different levels of manifestation, there's awards, because it's so cool, right? And it's and I loved in the last episode you talked about how that's a reminder that things work out.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about the commitment and just highlight that you were just yes, and you bought the ticket, right? And without figuring out the plane, without figuring out where you're going to stay, without figuring out any of these other things. And you're right, that does put a bookmark in for the universe that says, hey, I'm doing this. I'm not thinking about doing this. So maybe, if you want, send me a deal. Maybe make it work out easy, maybe not, right? You said, I'm going. And so I think that's one of the most important things that people don't realize is it's really that decision. Like, I'm going. Yeah. The minute you made that decision, it was going to be easy. You were of course going to get screaming good deals because you made that decision and you said, yeah, here's the ticket, I'm in. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's super important. I always love this story. It is like when we set intentions. I wrote a newsletter about this, and a friend of mine, and she was just like, I never knew this is what I wanted. We were sitting in one of those pictures that Lindsay's talking about on the beach in the Mediterranean. And she's like, I didn't know this is what I wanted. I'm like, oh, I totally knew this is what I wanted. Then she's like, thanks for helping me create it. Thanks for creating it for me. Right. So it's always important to ask for what we want. Because, the idea had been rolling around in my head for a little while, and I believe that there's part of the spark that said, yeah, now's the time. Like, there's probably 10 other people thinking that same thing. So I love that. So cool. So tell me, what's the biggest thing that you took away from Manifest 10K?
Excuse me. Sorry. The live Manifest 10K live.
Yeah. Manifest 10K live.
The biggest thing was, I think there were two really big things. And the first one was the conscious realization of how your brain tries to scramble back to normalcy as soon as the plane touches down at home. Like,
such a big lesson.
I mean, by the time you get home, you're kind of tired. You need to recoup a little bit because it was this big, exciting trip. And thankfully, I didn't have jet lag because I was in the same time zone. But I can only imagine how that, piled on would change things. And just over those next few days, your brain tries to put you straight back into your old habits and into your old thinking because, change is scary and change is hard. But being so hyper aware of it, like, oh my gosh, my brain is trying to just go back to just doing its normal thing. No, we're not going to do that. We're gonna step into that person who we discovered on this amazing weekend. And that was just such a cool exercise to be able to do. And I was kind of on that journey to find that higher self, that in what you call your future self, that person who you're like, that's who I want to be, that's who I'm manifesting, and being able to, say the name and instantly step back into that when you could realize you were kind of sliding. That was huge. Because so much of what your brain does that holds you back is unconscious. We're just kind of trained with it. It's part of that money story. It's part of the how things are supposed to be story. So the extreme awareness of that was one of the biggest takeaways. But that was also the second big thing was kind of the antidote to that. And the second big thing was the experience of standing in a room full of people who are totally different from you, totally different businesses, different backgrounds, and everybody's got completely different goals. Like, I didn't meet a single person in there who had goals that were anything even close. Like, those who wanted to start charities or foundations, they were totally different. Those of us who wanted to buy vacation homes, I'm talking like, a house in the mountains, and somebody else is talking about in the Mediterranean, like you said. It's like we have those same goals of success and freedom and creating this life that just feels amazing, but nobody's goals were anything alike.
Right.
At the same time. But yet we're all standing there just like cheering each other on and we're sharing our ideas, and everybody's just like, yes, that's awesome, and it's totally going to happen. And that is kind of irreplaceable, to be able to stand in that room and feel that energy and to say, these people who were complete strangers 12 hours ago or 24 hours ago totally believe in me to be able to do this. And there's no ulterior motives there. Everybody's just there to completely support each other and to see each other succeed. And that's amazing. And so as you're kind of going through your day, once you get back home and your normal life is trying to set back in, it's almost like another voice in your head, but it's like a collective voice because you find yourself saying things or doing things. And I at least keep flipping back to those people I met and being in that room and sharing, money stories and your thoughts and your dreams and going, okay, if the group heard me say this thing that just went through my head, what would they say? Because it would not be a positive response. It'd be like, well, that's a terrible story. Let's change that, shall we? um, so that combined with being able to see what your brain tries to do when you get back to normalcy is so powerful, because knowing that your brain is trying to pull you back into everyday life is one thing, but being able to go, I got to experience a room full of people who totally believe that I can do whatever I set my mind to, and that is why I don't have to go back to normalcy, is just, I've never experienced anything else like that. And I feel that most people haven't, because you don't normally get to foster that. And it was also really funny because it's such an amazing antidote to those people in your life, whether you have one or two like I do, or whether it's your entire family who, they ask, what are you doing and what are your dreams? And if you tell them, they either directly or kind of passive aggressively manage to like slap it down. And like everybody knows at least one of those people. And it can be so frustrating because you start feeling so guarded about what you talk about. Mm-hmm. But then after experiencing this huge group of people who just wants to shout, that's awesome, at every opportunity about what you want to do, all of a sudden it's so easy to look at that one person and go, and I was at the first Manifest 10K live. Mm-hmm. So that was a small group, compared to what it's growing into. So it's like, I had 30 people yelling that that's awesome and telling me that I was going to achieve everything. And that really outweighs your opinion of me in this moment. And I would say anyone who has a dream and wants to manifest something really incredible for their lives should absolutely experience that, because it really it puts things in perspective.
Mm-hmm. How do you think that's helped you move forward in your business since you've gotten back?
Again, just kind of knowing that there's a lot of people out there that even if, it's like my business being very, very spiritual and what people would call woo. And I talked to a couple people in the room that there was no, like, we just did totally different things. Like they were totally not woo, very down to earth, other than the manifesting and whatnot. Like that was kind of as far out of the box of normal that, they generally stepped. But still just seeing them, maybe not really understanding what I'm talking about, but they're still just like, that's really cool. And you're totally going to do awesome with that. So now, like a year ago, if I shared a program and got crickets, or an offer and got crickets, I would just be like, well, apparently I suck and nobody wants to hear from me.
Right.
And I'm just going to retreat back into myself and not talk to anybody until I scrape together the confidence to do it again. And since going through Manifest 10K and having, the amazing car being eaten by a pothole and braking incident that has led to so many things that we never could have foreseen, and then going to Manifest 10K live and being able to meet these people that it's just like everybody wants so much for each other. Mm-hmm. It totally changes my response to sharing my products, because it's like, it's no longer I share it once or twice and nobody signed up, so okay, we're just going to scrap that idea because apparently it's a terrible idea. It's okay, I put that little bit of energy out into the universe and I didn't get it, there was no immediate visual response. I could not immediately see something coming back, but that's okay, because now I know for every little bit that you put out into the universe, like every time you share it, every time you reassure yourself that this is awesome and it is going to work, it is getting out there and it's circulating, and it will come back to you as long as you don't cut the power source before it has a chance to.
I love that example. So it's given you the confidence to really keep sharing. And we were talking a little bit before we got on this, for entrepreneurs that aren't marketers, marketers would say, like, you have to keep sharing, right? But often entrepreneurs, I think, have that same feeling that you have. I put it out there. Nobody said anything. Nobody signed up right away. So I must be doing something wrong. And so it's given you, and I think the typical marketing advice is like someone has to see it 7 times before it even registers that it's in their head, or, that it's there. Right. And so it's given you the confidence to step in and say, I can keep sharing. I love it. Keep the power source plugged in.
Yeah. That's really what it feels like. Because when I realized that when I put something out there, it's like sending something out. And if I decide, well, that's apparently not working, it's kind of just like unplugging it. And it's like, now it's kind of just hanging out there in the universe, but I didn't give it enough time and energy to reach who it needs to reach, to do what it needed to do, and to morph into anything more than that one thought. Yeah. And so that's kind of the mental image that I've been creating. That's like every time I share and every time I do anything having to do with it, it's sending like another one of those, thoughts out. And eventually they'll combine into something big enough that will, and those right people will be pulled to it like a beacon. I know that, because I know that's how manifesting works. It's not always about just working hard until you flood your general vicinity and people can't help but notice you. It's about knowing that it's going to go out and it's going to touch the right people. Yeah. Even if you're, you don't have to have hundreds of people noticing it for that first perfect person to go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need. Mm-hmm. And then it just snowballs. So
oh, that's
awesome. You have to keep it plugged in.
You do have to keep it plugged in, right? And I love that you shared, like, a year ago, you're like, let me just pull the plug out. Like, this isn't working, pull the plug. This isn't working, pull the plug. And so many people do that. But over the last year, between the online course and Manifest 10K Live, I think took a huge leap into this for you. You've developed that trust in the process, and then also that confidence in yourself. Would you say you're more confident now than you were a year ago?
Absolutely, because of connecting with that future self. Mm-hmm. And again, it's like maybe I have a little bit different advantage because that's kind of what I do professionally, but just, some of the things you teach puts it in such a cool perspective, and I can step into that future self and not worry so much, what do other people expect of me?
Right.
And so I put things out because, like, a few years ago, I was really kind of positioning myself as an angel channel and an angel expert and communicator. And it was getting really frustrating because, number one, people expect you to show up like certain industry experts. They expect you to be that person. And I was kind of trying to be that person. Yes. And it was not working. It was not working at all. But I was scared to break that mold, because it's like, well, if I do that, nobody's going to take me seriously. And then, now I'm not scared to break that mold. I'm willing to be who I am. And it was like the sales page I put out recently. That was a big step. That was scary, even for me, because it had language in it that I know is going to turn certain people off just because I used that language. The picture right at the top of the screen is going to turn a lot of people off just because it's not like, oh, look at me smiling and cute and looking like, an industry expert in higher self and angels. It's me, sending the bird to the world, and just like, but this is the point, because if you don't like that side of me, you don't need to work with me. And that's what I'm trying to bring in, women who want that same level of not worrying so much. And I really think the Manifest 10K program and live were such a huge part of catalyzing that in me, because I was reaching for it, but it was still, it's still hard to reach until you have a support group, until
Yeah.
you have someone backing you up and saying, yes, you should totally be that person. And yes, that person is totally going to turn some people off. And that's okay,
Right.
because the people who appeal to everyone are not the people who change the world and lead amazing lives.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. I love that you highlighted that, because so many entrepreneurs go through that same thing, right? Where it's like, I got to fit this mold. I have to look like this person that's already out there, in all aspects, not just physically, but like they have to be the same. And I love that
mhm.
you've gotten that confidence. And I know that's like what's building to attract who you want. So that's awesome. Yeah. Very cool. So I would love an update. And I know, there's a story that started in the very first Manifest 10K course that you took. And I remember you posting it, and you, I like to highlight, I love Lindsey and I love her story, but what I love also is that Lindsey's in a partnership, and I get the question all the time, like, how do I get my partner involved? Like, what do I do? And I think Lindsey is probably one of the best examples of just sharing without expectation. I feel like you never said, oh, Corey, you have to do this with me. You're like, hey, do you want to like play in this? Do you want to know what I'm doing? Without an expectation of whether he would or wouldn't do anything, or whether he would or wouldn't believe in what you were doing, right?
Right.
And believe, I mean, like the tactics. I know he believes in you no matter what. But yeah, so I always love to share that story, because you just kind of got him involved. Just tell us real quick, remind us how he got involved in the process and how it's kind of become what you two do together.
Some days I can't quite remember, like it is a little like, how did that start? Because I just have a tendency to overshare with him sometimes,
Yeah.
like whatever I happen to be reading, if it like blows my mind and I'm like, this is so cool, I just start reading it to him.
Yeah.
And, he just listens. Um, but the Manifest 10K thing, he kind of got piqued by that too, because of where we were financially at the
Uh-huh.
time. He also kind of had that same response of like, I'll take an extra 10K. That'd be awesome.
Right?
um, and just, and again, the way you set up the program was so nice, because the emails were so short, and like I could just pull out those little snippets
Mm-hmm.
and not like overwhelm him. But just, number one, it was so simple and so easy to do, but there was that backing up of why this is important, why this works.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just really easy for him to just listen to me talk about it. And a lot of it was the language,
Mm-hmm.
like um like stop saying that's expensive,
Mm-hmm.
or stop, like the grocery thing. I think that was really one place where it really got kind of set in his mind. Was he looked at our bank account, and I had just gone and spent like $300 on groceries, and he said, we just spent a lot of money. And I turned and was like, we invested that money in our groceries. And I think that was one of those moments, that might not have been the first moment, but that was one of those
Mm-hmm.
moments where the light bulb kind of went on, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, I see what you're doing.